Well, I'm really excited to share with you today. This year's March-April edition of Moment Magazine is truly amazing. How many of you are aware of Moment Magazine? It's on its website. Moment Magazine bills itself as independent journalism from a Jewish perspective. The magazine was founded in 1975 by no less Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel, along with a man named Leonard Fine. And in its premier issue, it declared that Moment would include diverse opinion of no single ideological position, except, of course, commitment to Jewish life. So that's Moment Magazine. Now, the March-April issue is, you ready? The Messiah issue. Okay? The Messiah issue. The whole magazine is dedicated to the Messiah, issues about the Messiah. And the byline is, everything you wanted to know, but were afraid to ask. All right, so a little tongue-in-cheek, but interesting. So, I would like to take a few moments and explore some modern Jewish thinking regarding the Messiah as presented in Moment Magazine, March, April 2012, on pages 24 and 25, which I'm going to turn to. I don't normally preach from magazines, by the way, but there are 10 short statements. I've, highlighted some of them here. 10 short statements by 10 different rabbis. Okay, these are educated rabbis representing a wide spectrum of Jewish thinking and from the Jewish religious community. And they were asked this question: are Jews still expecting a Messiah? Okay, so I'm going to quote a few of these. Can't do all of them. We've got a little quote from Rabbi Gershon Winkler, Thousand Oaks, California. And I can't read the whole thing, but I think I'm doing justice to the essence of what they're saying. So he has an independent shul there. He says, very few of us ever expected the Messiah. Truth be told, the Messiah has probably been here a few hundred times, but got spat at on the way to school. Or told he wasn't Jewish enough and had to reconvert. Or got ousted from a temple board meeting because he couldn't pay taxes. Not taxes, couldn't pay his dues. Who knows? So his answer to the question, are Jews expecting a Messiah? Who knows? Here is another quote from Rabbi Peter Schweitzer from New York, New York, from a humanist congregation. He says, years ago, a popular evangelical bumper sticker read, "I found it." How many remember that? I found it. The Jewish version would read, "I'm still looking for it." In contrast to Christians who assert that the Messiah has come, Jews would never be satisfied with any applicant for the job. Now that's very interesting. No one's qualified to be the Messiah. Messianic claimants have all fallen short in the past and will in the future. Waiting around for messianic redemption is therefore a distraction from life's immediate challenges. Our focus should be bringing redemption in our own lifetime and with our own two hands. Basically, he's saying we can save ourselves. Okay, these are rabbis. These are not uneducated. This is rabbinic religious thinking in the modern Jewish community today. Reform. Here's a Reform rabbi, Laura Novak Weiner from Fresno, California. Every year at Passover, we set an extra cup of wine at our Seder tables for the prophet Elijah. Eliyahu Hanavi. And then she goes on to describe who is Elijah. she says, who is Elijah? We are all Elijah. As Jews, we are each God's partner in the creation and ongoing perfection of the world. God calls each one of us to heed the prophets' call to heal the sick, feed the hungry, and so forth. Any individual Messiah cannot and will not do that for us. We are all part of the messianic process. So basically, she's saying we're all Messiahs. Remember the movie Spartacus? I am Spartacus. We're all Messiahs. And so that's a Reform rabbi. Here's one from the conservative Rabbi Amy Walker Katz. And I'm just, quoting small snippets, but they're all very short. Answering the question, are Jews still expecting a Messiah? Speaking for myself only, I am not waiting for a personal Messiah who will bring a kingdom of God on earth. I prefer a more active approach. And so her answer is, I don't believe in a personal Messiah. Modern Orthodox, again, just quickly, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg from Riverdale, New York. He says, it would appear that secular Jews have renounced the belief in the Messiah. But I believe that the choice to continue living as a Jew is the statement, quote, I still believe the world will be perfected, and by implication, I will work to bring the Messiah. And so the more orthodox the quotes become, the more the tendency to believe in a personal Redeemer, a personal Messiah. I'll read one more from ultra-Orthodox Rabbi Abraham Twersky from TaNaK, New Jersey, quoting Maimonides, 12th principle of faith. I believe, ani ma'amin, right? I believe with complete faith in the coming of the Messiah. And even though he may delay, nevertheless, I anticipate every day that he will come. And so he ends his little article. We anticipate the imminent coming of the Messiah. And so that is a little survey of modern religious Jewish views of the Messiah. And I want to read one more covered on page 33 by another rabbi, although he wasn't included in the first group of rabbis. Bear with me here. This is really interesting. Shlomo Ezagai. Rabbi Shlomo Ezagai heads the Chabad Lubavitch House of North Palm Beach, Florida. Okay? Here's what he says. I believe that the Lubavitch Rabbi Schneerson, is the Mashiach. Though I realize that there is controversy about this within Chabad. And then he quotes the Talmud. The Talmud says that if the Mashiach is alive, it will be Rabbi Yehuda. But if he's chosen among the dead, it will be someone like the prophet Daniel. This shows us that the Mashiach can come from the dead. And in fact, there are many different classical sources that talk about the Mashiach as rising from the dead. It's not that extraordinary. One of the 13 principles of faith is belief in the resurrection of the dead. Here is a rabbi who believes the Messiah will be, he's believing that Rabbi Schneerson is going to be raised from the dead because of teachings in the Talmud. He believes in a Messiah who will rise from the dead. I find that fascinating. As we pursue this idea of Messiah, it's important to understand that the term Messiah is only one of many names given to the one promised in the Scriptures. I want to take a look at just 4 passages which speak about a personal Messiah. We, of course, as Messianic Jews, believe in a personal Redeemer. We're going to look at the Torah, the writings, and the prophets. In the book of Numbers, chapter 24, this is in the Torah, Moses records this, and we sang in our opening of the service, Matovu, the words of Balaam, the prophet, who looked over the nation of Israel and prophesied, how lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. But he also, on his fourth oracle, the spirit of prophecy came upon Balaam. This is the nation of Israel, fresh out of Egypt. And here he is on a mountain looking out over the entire nation. And this is what he says in verse 17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. Notice the personal him. A star shall come out of Jacob. A scepter shall rise out of Israel and batter the brow of Moab and destroy all the sons of tumult. And then in verse 19, out of Jacob one shall have dominion and destroy the remains of the city. I see him. I see him. He's coming, but not now. Now, to understand that our Jewish people understood he was talking about the Messiah about 15 to 1600 years later, the famous Rabbi Akiba, taking from this verse, looked at Shimon bar Kosiba, or Shimon ben Kosiba, and heralded him as the Messiah and changed his name to Bar Kokhba, son of the star, based on this verse, and said that this is the Messiah. This is the one who will lead us in the battle against the Roman legions and, take the yoke of Rome off of us. He's the Messiah. Let's rally behind him. This is Akiba, clearly identifying this as a messianic passage. Unfortunately, even though this is a correct messianic passage, Bar Kokhba led Israel into one of its greatest and most devastating defeats in history. He turned out to be a false Messiah. The verse that Akiba chose was correct. The person he chose was wrong. And he was called son of the lie after that. And so, in the days of Moses, I see him, but not now. It's as if, and I love to do this, it's as if Moses took a yod, the yod that we point at when we read the Torah, and he was saying, he's coming. He's pointing, he's saying, I see him, but not now. Someone's coming in the future. And so, the way I describe this is that the Torah is eternal, but it's not complete because it points to another. And then we have in the writings of the prophets, in Yeshayahu, Isaiah, some 700 years after the time of Moses, still speaking about a personal redeemer. And I like the way this is translated in this modern, the Jewish Publication Society's Holy Scriptures, TaNaK. Isaiah 62, verse 11. Isaiah is writing, see, the Lord has proclaimed to the end of the earth, announce to fair Zion, your deliverer. Here's another name. The star is a name of the one to come. Here, your deliverer is coming. See, his reward is with him, personal. The prophets anticipated the coming of a personal redeemer. His reward is with him, his recompense before him. And in Hebrew, it says, Hine Yish'ech ba, Yish'ech, your Yeshua, your Yish'ech, your salvation, your deliverer. People ask me, where's the name of Yeshua in the TaNaK? Well, here it is, and it's not speaking about a principle of salvation. It's talking about one coming, your deliverer, as translated here in the Jewish Publication Society. Your deliverer is coming. And so Isaiah picks up the yod and says, he's still coming. He's still coming. The deliverer is coming. And then we have a couple of hundred years later in the writings in the book of Daniel, another amazing portion. I'd like us to turn to Daniel chapter 7. To me, this is an outstanding portion of Scripture that I had never known before growing up as a Jewish person in Philadelphia. I never knew the Bible said what we're getting ready to read in the book of Daniel, about 500 years before the Common Era. Isaiah lived approximately 700 years before the Common Era. Daniel 7, verse 9. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, his wheels a burning fire. This is an amazing picture here. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 thousands. How much is that, by the way? 1,000 thousands is 1,000,000, right? And 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. How much is that? Like 100 million. I mean, this is an awesome scene. Who could this Ancient of Days be? Only the God of Israel. The court was seated and the books were opened. And then it goes on. In verse 13, he picks up the vision. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days. Whoa, here's one who is called the Son of Man. Here's another title, the Son of Man. And he's brought before the Ancient of Days. And to this one, to this Son of Man, to him, personal, was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. This is none other than King Messiah. I mentioned Rabbi Akiba before. Rabbi Akiba related these thrones where it says the thrones were put in place. He said one was for God and one was for the Messiah. Amazing. Our prophets spoke about a personal Messiah. And then finally, even the last of the writing prophets, Malachi, he's the last writer of the TaNaK. So even in the time of Daniel, Daniel picked up the same yod and pointed forward. He's coming. And then Malachi, who again was the last one to write in the canon of the TaNaK, in chapter 3, is saying, again, Malachi picks up the yod and points forward. Even in the days of Malachi, he had not yet come. Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And the Lord, it says, Ha'adon, the Lord whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple. even umalach habrit, malach, a play on names with Malachi, even the messenger of the covenant in whom you delight, behold, he is coming. So even in the days of Malachi, Malachi picked up that yod and said, he's still coming. And so what we can say is that the canon of the TaNaK was closed. It's eternal, but it's not complete because our prophets say he's still coming. Personal. He is still coming according to Malachi. Now, of course, we as Messianic Jews believe that Yeshua is the Messiah. But I want us to turn for a moment. I want us to look just at 2 verses in the Brit Hadashah. You know, there's something about reading a book. I actually once read a book called How to Read a Book. The book is this thick. It's a great book. It took me a while to get through this book on how to read a book. But you know, when you read a book, there's something about how the book starts and how the book ends that gives the tone and the flavor and, you know, what's this book all about? I want us to turn to the very first book in the Brit Hadashah. Mattai, chapter 1, verse 1. And let's see how this book begins. Sefer HaYuchasin shel Yeshua HaMachiach ben David ben Avraham. The book of the genealogy of Yeshua. Whoa! It begins with a Jewish name. Yehoshua, Yeshua is a Jewish name. We actually read it in Isaiah. Behold, your Yeshua comes, your salvation, your deliverer. This book begins with a Jewish name. It's about a Jewish man named Yeshua. Yeshua HaMachiach, the Messiah. What people had been expecting a Messiah? The law pointing forward, the prophets pointing forward, the writings pointed forward. You know, we sing Hatikva, the hope, the nation, the land being our hope. But we have another hope that is yearning in our hearts, and that is for the Messiah. And this book begins by saying, this Jew named Yeshua is the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. The very first verse of the New Covenant encapsulates 2,000 years of Jewish history. This is a Jewish book about a Jew named Yeshua who fulfills the hope and the longing of our people, of which Moses and the prophets wrote. Yeshua the Messiah. And that's how it begins. How does it end? Revelation chapter 22. This is almost the last verse. I mean, there's 21 verses. I'm reading from verse 16. We read these words. Ani Yeshua, I, Yeshua, have sent my angel to testify to you these things in the kehilot, the communities, the congregations. Anochi shoresh David, I am the root and the offspring of David. There he is at the end of the book saying, I am the Jew from this root of David. I am a Jew. He never stopped being Jewish. It's a Jewish book. I am the root and the offspring of David, but he doesn't stop there. He says, the bright and the morning star. I am the star of which Balaam spoke. Akiba thought that Bar Kokhba was that star. But here Yeshua is saying, I, who am the root of David, I am that bright and morning star of which the Torah speaks. Fascinating how the beginning and an ending of a book can give us an idea of what the book is about. I'd like to share two more things before I close here. One is from a great book, which I do recommend, called The Messiah Texts, written by Raphael Patai, who is an internationally regarded anthropologist and biblical scholar. He's written over 600 articles and 24 books. He's a recognized scholar, Jewish scholar. And he writes about all the traditions of the Messiah in the Jewish community. And I want to read about one tradition here, Messiah ben Joseph, because I feel that this is fascinating for us. He says, regarding Messiah ben Joseph, this is the idea that there's two Messiahs. When the death of the Messiah became an established tenet in Talmudic times. Now that's important. This biblical scholar says that the death of the Messiah was a tenet, which is an established, understood principle in Jewish thinking. When the death of the Messiah became an established tenet in Talmudic times, this was felt to be irreconcilable with the belief in the Messiah as the Redeemer who would usher in the blissful millennium of the Messianic age. What is he saying? He's saying, and this is how I understand it, our rabbis honestly wrestled with two lines of prophecies about the Messiah. One whole lineage or line of prophecy spoke about a Messiah who would suffer and die. They honestly wrestled with this. But then there was a whole line of scriptures that spoke about the conquering Messiah. How to reconcile this? And they honestly wrestled with this issue. And so the dilemma, he goes on to say, was solved by splitting the person of the Messiah in two. One of them, called Messiah ben Joseph, was to raise the armies of Israel against their enemies, and after many victories and miracles would fall victim to Gog and Magog. The other, Messiah ben David, will come after him. In some legends, will bring him back to life. We're getting back to the other rabbi's idea. And will lead Israel to the ultimate victory and triumph and the Messianic era of bliss. Our rabbis, the sages of old, wrestled with this issue. How can a Messiah die, and how can he conquer? Well, that's very similar to what we as Messianic Jews believe. We believe in a Messiah who suffers. We believe in a Messiah who is raised from the dead. We believe in a Messiah who conquers. And so the belief is extremely close. The only difference is we don't believe that it's going to be two Messiahs. We believe it's going to be one Messiah who will come twice. That's how the dilemma is reconciled. And finally, I want to get back to Moment Magazine, because there's a fascinating book review in the back of the magazine. And the title of this book review is, "They Don't Make Jews Like Jesus Anymore." And it's a book review of the book called The Jewish Gospels, the story of the Jewish Christ, meaning Messiah. Now, the book was written, it just came out. I have not read the book, it just came out. The book was written by one of the most notable scholars alive today, Daniel Boyarin, professor of Talmudic culture at the University of California, Berkeley. And this reviewer says he may be one of the most influential scholars of ancient Judaism today. This is a heavyweight. The person reviewing the book is Pamela Eisenbaum. She teaches at Ilaf School of Theology and also the Center for Judaic Studies at the University of Denver. And I'm going to quote this because this book is absolutely amazing. Just different quotes. She's saying Boyarin has written 9 books in English and a couple in Hebrew, several of which deal with the relationship between Judaism and early Christianity from the 2nd to the 5th century. Okay? The Jewish Gospels, by contrast, mines an earlier stratum of Jewish literature for older evidence that explains the origins of belief in Jesus. Put briefly, this is going to floor you. Put briefly, his thesis is that the concept of a divine Messiah is not some sort of weird mutation in the history of Judaism. It was a commonly held idea among Jews at the time of Yeshua, and even earlier, a radical claim to be sure. Whoa! The whole book is about a Jewish belief in a divine Messiah that existed pre-Yeshua. This is radical. Goes on to say, as contemporary scholars agree, the first followers of Jesus were Jews. Virtually all the writers of the New Testament were Jews, and so on. And they remained in the Jewish fold. Boyarin says the concept of the divine Messiah was not a deviation or even an innovation. It was a prominent and long-standing Jewish idea that preceded the crucifixion of Yeshua. He writes, while by now almost every Christian and non-Christian is happy enough to refer to Jesus, the human, as a Jew, I want us to go a step beyond that. I wish us to see that Messiah, too, the divine Messiah, is a Jew. Whoa! Christology, which is the study of the Messiah, or the early ideas about the Messiah, is also a Jewish discourse and not, until much later, an anti-Jewish discourse at all. And he gets into the book of Enoch, the book of Daniel. Amazing! Probably one of the greatest Jewish scholars alive today writes a groundbreaking book about the existence of a Jewish belief in a divine Messiah. What is our conclusion today? Well, not so much a conclusion, but an observation to invite further inquiry. We've read today that there are traditional Jewish views about a personal Messiah. And the Messianic view is that there is a personal Messiah. We read today about traditional Jewish views about a Messiah who dies. The Messianic view is Messiah dies. Now, the reasons are different, but the fact of a Messiah who dies is the same. We've read today about traditional Jewish views, at least by some, who are expecting the Messiah to rise from the dead. Well, we had the Messianic view is Messiah rises from the dead. And we read today about a groundbreaking, brand new book that's out by one of the most esteemed Jewish scholars alive today, who affirms Jewish views about a divine Messiah. That is the Messianic view as well. The question is Yeshua the personal Messiah of which Moses and the prophets and the writings speak? Is Yeshua the Messiah who dies? Is Yeshua the Messiah who rises from the dead? Is Yeshua the divine Messiah of which Boyarin writes? The Jewish writings of the New Covenant present him as such. Yeshua himself claimed to be the Messiah. And it's my hope that each and every one of us would take the time to be, as it were, on a jury and review this case as one on a jury. Yeshua has stepped forward and said, I am the root and the offspring of David. I am the bright and the morning star. Only those on a jury who are willing to examine the evidence can arrive at an educated conclusion.